Thank you very much, Prof. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues. It's very good to be here to talk to you on the consumption trends of sugar-sweetened beverages. One of the dangers I face is that I work with a lot of professors. 3 of them are sitting right here. And from time to time, sometimes even at 4 a.m., you get an email with one wanting their pound of flesh. And so you live a very busy life. And so this afternoon, I hope I do justice for Professor Wilkes, who is in absentia here today, in presenting some of our work from our surveys. I think I've gotten this. Good. So by way of outline, I want to talk about the complementary approaches to preventing NCDs. We are going to also look on changing the patterns or changing patterns of food and nutrition in Jamaica and perhaps even in the Caribbean. We're going to take a look at a few health surveys that we have done in Jamaica. And from those surveys, I'm going to share some results on the consumption pattern of sweetened beverages in Jamaica. We'll have a little discussion based on a systematic review that I've looked into, and then I'll bring it all to a close. So we face a daunting task in preventing chronic non-communicable diseases. And as you can see, for the individual, this might even be I think this needs to come with a manual. As you can see, even for the individual, they face an uphill struggle. Some of the things are missing on this part of the screen. And so what I want to show you is that for the individual, there is some amount of responsibility. And as the NHF slogan says, your health is your responsibility. But in addition to being your own responsibility, we have found through research that health education and the individual approach works more for some group than it does for others. And so what we also want, in addition to the individual approach to tackling the NCD, is some amount of change. And that change needs to happen in the environment. And this environment makes it much more difficult for the individual to accomplish that kind of change that we're asking them to do. So we want to change toxic environment. And how do we do this? We can do this through several means, some of which are listed here. So we look at policy change in the area of smoke-free environment, and that has been done, and excellent work by Professor Knox Hagley and the Heart Foundation, who have championed that cause over the years. And then we are moving into warning labels, food labeling, product reformulation, safe space for physical activity, and the availability and affordability of fruits and vegetables. So if we want to see that kind of a change, then we need to make that environmental shift and make that more possible, both for the individual and for the population. One of my professional heroes, Dinesh Sinha, in his seminal publication, Diet in the Cities, many years ago, suggested to us from as early as the 90s that there are changes in our dietary patterns in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, in that we are moving to a high-fat food from animal source and also refined sugars. So we're seeing more of that. The eating habits of Jamaicans have also changed, and we're seeing that continue to change. And Barry Popkin, another one of my heroes, have done a good job this morning in talking about that evolution of the diet, or what we call the devolution of the diet, in that you have increased consumption of carbonated beverages, increased consumption of sugary snacks and convenience foods. And this is a recipe for disaster. In addition to that, there is also a decrease in fruits and vegetables. So imagine if we were baking a cake, and I'm beginning to list out for you some of the ingredients in that recipe for the cake. Already, I've said to you that we have increased consumption of carbonated beverages, snacks, convenience food. And now I'm adding to that we are decreasing fruit and vegetable consumption. That sounds like it's not going to be the best of cake. work done by the now defunct Caribbean Food and Nutrition Institute, and Professor Henry is looking at the slide and saying, these are my slides, shows that the availability of energy has steadily increased over the years, not in a good way, because there's also an excess. And what do you think people do with excess energy? Didn't they throw them out? When you eat on your plate and there's excess, you just say, you know, I'll put that away for another time. No, they consume it. And so what we've had is an increase in the consumption of energy beyond what is said to be the benchmark for the normal population. But in addition to that, I want to pull out for you to say that we have in excess sugars 250% available. In excess fat, 150% available. And this, you can read the full paper. It's a 2004 publication by Professor Henry, published in the CaIHR if you wish to look at that. Again, as we continue with the ingredients in this cake recipe, you see that for the Jamaican population, 15 to 74 year, that fruit and vegetable intake is dismal. As you can see, just about 0.5 of the population, 0.5% of the population, consuming over 3 servings per day of vegetable. And for fruit, you can see just about 1% of the population consuming more than 2 servings of fruit per day. And many of you would have seen this data, but I want to bring it home to you that studies like the Interheart study and the MESA study, and these are longitudinal cohort study, have shown that a lack of fruit and vegetable intake, or diet on a whole, is related to our cardiovascular health and, of course, non-communicable diseases risk in general. So diet is bad. What has been happening to our children? I like this slide, not because of the ladies and their round shape on it, but because what we have shown that from work in the 60s by Ashcroft and Lovell to work by Georgiana Strawn and Christine Fox in 2005, that we have had a significant increase in the weight, the average weight of an 11-year-old girl. So from 1966 to 2005, this is the average gain in weight. So we have moved from 30 kilogram as the mean weight to 40 kilogram. And look at the 15-year-old girl. It's no different. A 6 kilogram, rather 7 kilogram difference here. And so we're increasing in weight, increasing in sugar consumption, increase in fat consumption, decrease in fruit and vegetable intake. And if I had time, I'd show you the physical activity, because we're decreasing in physical activity as well. For those of you who think this is only happening in the 11-year-olds and the 15-year-old, I just included the data table to show you that if you look at the 11 to 15 group, as you can see from 66 to 2005 with some 1999 data in there, it's all been increasing. So what I'm going to do now is take you through at least 6 surveys, and 6 surveys gives us a wealth of data that I don't have the time to present today, and I'm just going to give you a kind of introduction to what we're presenting. The first one I want to talk to you about is the Global School-Based Student Health Survey, and we can't take any credit for this because this is done by the National Council on Drug Abuse, and so I give credit to Uki Atkinson, who so gladly shared her data with me for the purpose of this symposium. And so this is a school-based survey that is a cross-sectional in nature, and it sampled 1,667 students, and it is comparable to surveys done in other parts of the world. The other surveys we'll look on is the Jamaica Youth Risk and Resiliency Behavior Survey, and these were done in 2005 and 2006. And they are school-based and community-based surveys, in that the 10 to 15 is a school-based and the 15 to 19 is a community-based. Together, we have a big sample, or a big enough sample here, 3,000 in the 10 to 15 and 1,300 in the 15 to 19. The questionnaires here were interview administered, which gives greater control over what is being captured. We collected data on blood pressure, anthropometry, and we also had some biomedical measures. The other 2 surveys we're going to look at is the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle Survey 1, which was in 2000, and the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle 2, which was done in 2008. There is, of course, a lifestyle survey that was done before that, but the data was mainly self-reported, and the professor is sitting right here at the front table, Professor Peter Figueroa, the first one to do this kind of a community-based survey in Jamaica to document chronic non-communicable disease risk factors, and of course, that is invaluable in building on for these surveys. We also have the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle Survey 3, but the data are not being shared here today because that final report is not yet ready. So in terms of numbers, we have 2,000 in the 2001 sample and about 2,800 in the 2008 sample. The sample for the lifestyle survey had attached to it, of course, post-stratification weighting. So the data I'm presenting are national representative data for the Jamaican population. In terms of what did we ask, I'm giving you a snapshot, and for the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle Survey and for the Jamaica Youth Risk and Resiliency Behavior Survey, the question was pretty much this question. There are, of course, leading questions to this one, and in addition to this question capturing sweetened beverage consumption for the Jamaica Health and Lifestyle Survey, both 1 and 2, there's a shortened validated food frequency questionnaire. So in addition to this question, we also have data on the quantity or the portion sizes that are consumed for both Jamaica Health and Lifestyle 1 and Jamaica Health and Lifestyle 2. For the global school-based health survey, the question that was asked to capture sweetened beverage consumption was this one, as you can see here, and the options that they provided for response are listed here as well. So what did the data show? I almost had nightmares, and I'll tell you why in a little while. Clearly, sweetened beverage consumption is a problem in 10 to 15-year-old children because, as you can see, approximately 66% of our children are consuming 1 or more bottle or glass of sweetened beverage consumption on a daily basis. And that's alarming. And the difference is not that great between males and females. So they're consuming roughly the same, except that when you look on the greater than 1 bottle or glass per day, there is some male-female differences here denoted by this Pearson's chi-square test. If we go to look on the school-based survey, I will go through the slides according to consumption pattern. So if you look on those who consume less than 1 time or 1 bottle or box per day, you'll see that that's just about 16%. Male-female differences, none really. You can see that there are some differences in terms of grade, class. If we look on those who drink 1 or more times per day, as you can see, that increases 68%. And again, there is no real sex difference here, no real difference as you move from grade 8 through to grade 11. If you take a look at those who drink 2 or more times per day, you see that this is just a little under 50%. Again, we are seeing now some male-female difference here with the male consuming more, no real difference as you move across grade level. As you go to the extreme end, those who drink 3 or more times per day, and I want to stop here to emphasize that the times per day is just a measure of a consumption, a serving per day. And by serving, we mean a bottle, 1 full bottle, because we've had much discussion and some consumption survey has shown that once you open a bottle of soda, or you open a box drink, or as Barry calls it, juice bag, which is bag juice, once you open that, you never close it. You are going to consume that to completion. All right? And so that's what we refer to when we talk about times. It's an entire bottle of soda. So as you can see, we have a problem, increased consumption. If you look for the Global School Health Survey, if you look at the 2010 data and the 2017 data, it would appear at a glance that there are declines, right? Because if you look out here on the total, you see that there's 72% in 2010, and there is 69% or 70% in 2017. But let me just clear that up right now to say that in the group that are really consuming, if you look here, in the group that are consuming 2 or more times per day, there has been no change over the period of 2010 to 2017. In fact, in some instances, in the high consumers, you find that it might be tending to increase between 2010 to 2017. So again, in the persons who are really consuming a lot of sugar-sweetened beverage, the consumption pattern has not changed between 2010 to 2017. And this is just for 13 to 15 years old. If we look on some of the other dietary data, again, we want to zone in on fruit consumption. As you can see, a clear decline between 2010 and 2017 in the proportion of children who are consuming at least 2 or more serving of fruits per day. And this is alarming. You live in a country where we now have fruit vendors stringed along the street, but yet, as we can see, there's a decrease. This is certainly the wrong direction, because in 2010, we didn't have so many fruit vendors. So what is happening? If you look on vegetable, there's also a decline in vegetable consumption, but it's good to know that less of our children are in food insecure households, so they are not hungry, but what are they eating? That's the question. Perhaps fast food. If we look on the 15 to 19-year-old, and this is another age group from another survey, what we have shown here again is that you're looking at roughly 60% of the 15 to 19-year-old population in Jamaica, and this data again is weighted, consumes 1 or more bottle of sugar-sweetened beverage per day. So the story travels through from the 10 to 15, the 13 to 15, to the 15 to 19 now, where we have again the same 60% or more consuming 1 or more bottle per day. Sorry. If we look on the Jamaican adult population, 15 to 74 now, going across the population span, what you can see happening, again, if we focus on just those who are having 1 or more bottles or box per day, you'll see that this is over 40%. But this is where I want you to buckle your seatbelt, because I'm going to show you a slide that I've still not grappled, just bend my mind around. If you look on this, what you see is that look in this 65 to 74-year-old group. And I spent about 3 or 4 hours discussing this yesterday with colleagues all over. If you look, you realize how high the consumption is in the elderly population. So for a long time, we have complained and we have said that, this is an issue with our children. They're drinking too much soda. They're drinking too much carbonated beverages. But again, we must remember that when we capture sugar-sweetened beverage consumption, we're also talking about Kool-Aid, the powdered form of the sugar-sweetened beverage. We're also talking about the lemonade. We're also talking about the Tang. I see Shireen telling me about the Tang. We talk about all of these other sugar-sweetened beverages. And when we capture them, we find that the elderly population is also consuming a lot of sugar-sweetened beverages. So there's also cause for concern. I wouldn't blow it out of proportion. We looked at this yesterday, Prof, and one of the things we said we wanted to do was to look on this adjusting for different things, stratification by socioeconomic status and several things, and who the adults or who these elderly persons live with at home. Because if they live by themselves, of course, the consumption is going to be different than if they have a caregiver, that sort of thing. So we're not blowing this out of proportion, but what we're saying is that our concern cannot just be focused on children, but across the spectrum. If we look on the 2008 data, this is Jamaica Health and Lifestyle 2, what we find is that consumption of 1 or more bottle of sugar-sweetened beverage per day is anywhere from 50 to 70%. So anywhere from 50 to 70%, again, high consumption of sugar-sweetened beverage. If we were to look at it again by age, the problem persists. You still see this issue in the elderly population, so it doesn't go away. So in 2000, we see it. In 2008, it didn't go away. It remains. Not that it is not a problem in the younger population, but we have shown that repeatedly. And the only call I didn't make was to Professor Eldemar Scherer, who I know have data on the elderly, to ask her if she had anything on diet, so I could look to see if this was the same kind of trend she was seeing in her data on the elderly population. But it is something we are going to explore because we believe that it is important. If we compare across the two surveys over 2000 and 2008, what we see is that for those consuming one or more bottle or box or times per day, what you see is that there's an increase. And if you look on those who are consuming greater than 2 times per day, you can see that there's a massive increase between 2000 and 2008. And so now I'm anxiously anticipating what we will show in 2017 when we look across the 3 surveys. And bringing it to a close, there was a request for correlating this data or looking at this data in terms of risk of overweight and obesity. We did a lot of the univariate analysis, which showed that at that level there's little or no association. But when we look back at some of the data from the 15 to 19, one of the things that we have shown and we continue to show, especially in this age group, is that of course there's a strong association between increased consumption of sweetened beverage and the odds or risk of overweight and obesity, as can be seen here. And so we continue to say that this is linked to overweight and obesity. So just a few discussion points. Sugar-sweetened beverages said to be among the highest in the world in the Caribbean. And of course, the inconsistency of the consumption pattern that we see in Jamaica with the adult population or the elderly population, we believe is nuanced or explained by the drink that they make at home from rehydrating powders. And I just want to acknowledge help from our statistician and data from the sources that were used. Thank you very much.